To see you in real life.
Yeah, I kind of wish this technology would have existed back in the day when we did the book, right?
Yeah,
It
so
would have been fun to
cool.
meet you all then.
Yeah, that's great. So you're doing a podcast now, or what is this? A Zoom?
Uh, yeah, I don't know. I'd always wanted to do one ever since like back in Craft Leftovers heyday, inspired by Crafty Pod and all that jazz and Craft Sanity. And um, I just never did. I never took the leap. And so when I was getting back into writing about creative sustainability and things like that with my art and craft practice, I was like, why not now? And it was the 10-year anniversary of the book. So I'm like, why not the contributors of the book? I bet they've got some interesting things to talk about.
Yeah, that sounds great.
I have so many questions. I feel like we should
Yeah,
just get
that's great.
started, make
Okay,
it
I'm
official.
ready.
So today I'm here with Sherri Lynn Wood, and she's one of the contributors to Mend It Better way back in 2012. I'm really excited to be talking to her today. I just barely scratched the surface looking at her website about what she's been up to. And wow, like so many questions. So first, thank you for joining me today and taking a chance on this project I've got going on. And yeah, I guess I'll just hand it over to you. What can you tell us about yourself?
Thanks, Kristen. It's really good. I'm so excited to be here. It was such a pleasure being in your book back then and talking about mending. Um, And, I think mending is still a big part of what I'm doing. These days have been, I'm still improvising and quilting. A year ago, I had a real big focus on sustainable quilting as part of the workshop series, with the pandemic and everything, teaching online has been such a great and golden opportunity to reach audiences all across the world. And it's been exciting to kind of, um, be in that mode with quilters right now. And so I've been doing a lot of teaching. Like since we did the book, I did a residency at Recology San Francisco, which is the waste management corporation for the city of San Francisco. And that was 4 months, a 4-month residency. Having to make an entire exhibition. Many of them were quilts out of things I found in the dump. 100% of the materials coming from the dump itself. So that was an incredible experience. And so, taking that forward, one of the things I've been teaching a lot more of is quilting and sustainable quilting with found materials, still materials. I took back so many materials that I found in the dump, wools and corduroys and things like that. And then this year we've been doing abstract piecing, which is just a continuation. One of the things I've learned is that, with quilters in particular, they have so much stash already. So it's always, for me, it's about just having a diversity of materials. It might be found materials from old wool skirts or corduroy pants or men's shirts, but mixed in with our calico cottons and designer fabrics that we have in our stash, because that's the beautiful thing about teaching improvisational quilting is that you don't need X amount of any fabric. You just make it with whatever you have, and you can just substitute, and it all can be mixed together. So it's just been exciting to see a momentum around that too in patchwork quilting. I'm seeing more and more people interested in working with materials that are out in the world today, rather than just buying like quilters cottons.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's been happening, and
Yeah. Well, so how did so your online community that you're fostering is called Brave Patch, And can anyone join that at any time in the year, or is there a registration period?
Yeah, no, anyone can. It's just $20 a month is our standard fee. And it's, we have equity pricing. So there's a $10 and a $30 option, depending on your economic sliding scale, but it's all the same. It's all the same community. And it's just month to month. So you can people can come for a month. They can continue to stay. They can pop in and pop out according to what their schedule is like. And it's been great. We started it almost 2 years ago as a support for the online workshops that I've been teaching. And just as a way for people to continue to share the work that they were making in the workshops, and plus the workshops, we created quite a community, community forums, and people wanted to stay more connected through that process of taking the workshops, but then on forward. So we have groups in there that meet every Monday and just stitch and sew. They're not all groups that meet with me. We meet once a month with me, but there's other opportunities for Brave Patch members to come to the after sew parties in my workshops. There's also, a book group. There's just a discussion group that meets once a month. There's another sewing group that meets once a month. So there's just a lot of opportunities to hook in. And I think the thing that makes it special is that first of all, you connect with people all over the world, but also there's all kinds of quilting traditions. And I know your audience is much broader in the broader world of craft. So we've got knitting and mending and sewing and quilting and macrame, who knows what else. But the quilting
I don't think I've
world,
done any macrame yet. I have a book on it, but I haven't yet.
I want to do macrame.
Me too, actually.
I want to do macrame. Somebody start teaching macrame classes. I'll sign up. So, but we have modern quilters. We have so-called traditional quilters. We have art quilters, and all these groups organize locally in guilds or regionally in groups. And now that people are more used to online, a lot of these guilds and groups are meeting online as well as in person. I think more and more are starting to go back to in person, but they're still having online meetings. And the thing about improv quilting, it's really a process. It's it's a creative process. I mean, any kind of artistic practice is probably going to have some improvisation in it, whether you're cooking or sewing or dancing or art, painting or whatever. But the thing is that any of these other groups, modern, traditional, even art quilting, the improv practice and process is just a subset of those groups. And a lot of times people that are interested in making their own patterns and are not following other people's instructions and patterns find a hard, and they're also working abstractly. They're not working in a lot of art quilts are like making a landscape or making flowers or something that looks realistic too.
It's
not
very
all
figurative.
of it. Yeah, it's more figurative. That's the word.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a space where I like to say we get your improv quilts. Like, we really do get them. We really are understanding and not looking at them like, well, that's a little weird, which is what a lot of people get when they share their quilts in these other venues. So I think that kind of makes it unique. And the other exciting thing is that there's just more and more people that are interested in making patterns their own way. That from the quilting community, there just really is people, with the breakdown of all our structures and systems that have been happening the last couple of years, people are breaking down their own creative practices and saying, why am I doing this? Why, there's an urgent, I think there's, for me anyways, I feel an urgency to really make what's important to me. And so we also look at what's, our life practices, the connection between our life and our craft and how they inform each other and affect each other. So that's kind of what we're about in Brave Patch.
That sounds really beautiful, inspiring, wonderful. Yeah. And so I also noticed that coming up in May, you are participating in like is it a multi-day retreat workshop up in Wisconsin? Is that right?
Oh, right. Yeah, no, it's actually it's not in May, it's in June.
Oh,
It's
it's in
coming
June.
up in
Okay.
June. So last week of June, like June 27th to July 1st, and it's called Improv Fundamentals. It's really designed, it's going to be at Madeline Island School of the Arts, which is um, it's in Wisconsin, but it's in Lake Superior. You have to take an island to
Yeah.
get there. I mean,
Oh, that's
a
cool. A
ferry to get there.
ferry.
It's on an island.
Very
Yeah, so
cool.
it's really beautiful, and it's a great retreat center. They have really good facilities and good food, good living quarters and workspace. But it's really the improv fundamentals. I'm excited about that because it is going to be nice to teach in person again and be able to give more one-on-one attention to people and really focus in on what they want, what they need for their own creative journeys. But it's going to be a mindset class again. We're going to be looking at, improvisation, I like to say, is like apples and oranges to, kind of fixed pattern type things, following somebody else's instructions. And so it's geared towards first time improvisers or people that have improvised a little bit. I hope it'll help people with whatever kind of improv they want to do with other teachers and stuff, because it gives them just some of the basics of the process and the practice. But we'll do strip piecing, we'll do intuitive color, we'll learn how to follow like a score or prompts, how to regulate it so we can actually find flow. So I'm excited, and more advanced people too. I'll just be giving them harder challenges, that if we have more advanced participants, which would be great too.
I can't deny I looked at it and I was like, I want to sign up for that. But
Oh, it'll be
unfortunately,
fun.
I'll be in Chicago during that time. And so I'm like, darn it.
Darn it. Ever since 2001, I made a big shift in my practice from, I was doing more art quilting back then, and I had all kinds of beads and dyes and sheer fabrics and all kinds
Textures,
of materials,
yeah.
just tons of stuff. And I was making beautiful things. I was really, involved and enjoyed the things that I was making. But then somebody just came up to me and said, will you make a quilt out of my grandmother's? I would like to make 3 quilts on my grandmother's clothes for me and my 2 brothers. And would you be able to help me with that? And it was so profound. And the materials were just there. It was just what I had to do. What I had was what she gave me. And I found it so exciting. And I just, after that, that's really all I wanted to do. I didn't want to do all of the art quilt stuff.
Was that the start of the memory quilting?
Yes, and that was the bereavement quilting and the memorial quilts, and I called it passage quilting. And I did a big workshop session on that last fall too. And this idea that we can quilt with clothing or family linens or all the different types of materials that we have in our everyday lives. And not only can we connect to our grief and our loss and work through that experience. It's almost a collaboration with the person who has died, because you're working with their materials. We have this active kind of hands-on embodied opportunity to touch grief and be connected to it, and also have it contained and feel the emotions of it. It's a kind of mending, right? And then, but we can also do that with ourselves. I mean, we can do a quilt that represents who we were. Maybe we have old clothes from when we were younger, or even if we don't have those clothes, we can find like substitutes at the thrift store or whatever that reminds us of who we were at these different stages. Like, we can rewrite our stories of trauma, and our stories of, just whatever kinds of stories we have in our life. We can rewrite those stories as we make these quilts. So it's not just something for, the loss of a loved one. It's something that people can do for themselves, with their own experiences, or within their families. They can have materials from their different family members. There's so many different ways you can imagine this process. But if quilting is a story, the stories we tell with the materials that we have and the patterns that we make on our own, the way we put patterns together is it's just about making relationships, and we find out all those things within ourselves. So ever since then, that was kind of the track that I've been on, and more service oriented kind of craft practice than a consumption based practice where I'm just producing things and making them out in the world. So more receptive creativity, where the things come to you and then you almost are it's just channeling right through you. You're receiving it and listening to it, responding to it, and then creating something from that process. So it's very different.
It's very different
process.
I often find that when you give yourself some boundaries of like a material set or, some kind of process boundary, that instead of being restrictive, it almost unlocks your imagination. It narrows your focus in a way that allows you to expand out. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
it totally makes sense.
I often find that's my own personal experience, that so much of that feels reminiscent to like how I even got into craft to begin with, because when I was very young, like teenager, I wanted to be an artist with a capital A, and crafting was for like, this is going to sound so ridiculous now, but like crafting was for my grandma. My grandma was also an oil painter, so I really don't know how this got built up in my mind. Like she definitely embodied both in her own life. But when she passed away, I inherited all of her craft stuff. And after my mom held on to it for a while for me in storage in her house, she's like, okay, this can live with you now. And I was like, okay, or you can get rid of it. And so it came and lived with me, and I was surrounded by all of my grandma's stash, like her life of quilting and making clothes, and she made porcelain dolls and made the clothes for them, like fired them and everything. And so I had all this like lace and tulle, and I was not that kind of, I was not into that kind of fashion, so to speak. So I'm like, what am I going to do with this? And it really came from trying to figure out how to use this material that I just had, that started CraftLeftovers, and was like, how do I use up my grandma's stash? Like, this is a life of craft supplies that I'm starting my life with. And even now when I go to create something, and I come across her lace or whatever, I've got a couple things left from her craft stash, and it's so filled with memories and smells and textures of my childhood and my experience with my grandma. Like, I just had a conversation with Crispina French, and she was very much about like the memories that material holds. It's pretty fast. I don't know. I find it pretty fascinating.
And it is.
So one thing that I just want to, so a few things. One, I want to direct people to your website, which you write about these topics very freely, and you give, I read your article about the memory quilting or the passage quilts, and the process that one can go through, and how I really enjoyed your idea of you can recreate or like remake your memories, like go to the thrift store and pick out like how freeing it is to just pick clothes for you as a child, you as 30, you as now, you in the future, and like make something out of that, and how liberating that experience is. And probably how healing also.
Yes, definitely. And you can even go further than the personal, you can go into cultural meanings and things like
Hmm.
that too. Like, a lot I did a series of quilts way a long time ago, like in 2000. And I'd like to get back to that, to some of that. But I used a lot of like crocheted things that I found and toilet seat cozies and things that reminded me of my like middle class upbringing in the 70s, just
Right.
the sense of home, but it was also prescribed by an era, a time period, and a class structure, of
Hmm.
so there's so many levels of and there's artists all over the place doing that, where the materials are more than just color and design, right? Of a print or pretty color combinations. They can carry so much more meaning than that if we want, right? We can
Right.
we can access that. We can go to those other levels and access that. And it's all out there. There's so much of it out there. Um, so I don't know if I got off track there. What was your
No,
question
that's
again?
okay. That's okay. Well, I feel
Oh
like
my, oh yeah, my website.
I'm hearing your
Yeah.
MFA coming through there. Having been through that experience, talking about the context
Yeah,
inherent in
yeah,
materials. Yeah.
right,
No, that's
exactly.
really beautiful. Well,
Um,
so I guess yeah, in the show notes, I'll definitely link to some of the articles that we mentioned
yeah,
and your website, which is a great resource, and the community. Um,
great.
so how so that was part of your transition from um, making more art quilts into these like passage quilts, material context based quilts, where
Right.
the material that you're using has importance. And then, so at what point did you start teaching this? Because like it sounds like it was more of like a personal in your studio thing at first, and then now it's become you're sharing it with the quilting community and how they can unlock this in their own practice.
Right, right. Well, I've been teaching for a really, really long time, almost since the time I started quilting. But it's really been interesting. I mean, before the pandemic, there was, you had opportunities to teach in person. So you would fly somewhere and you'd have 6 hours to teach. And you would teach at a guild here or there. Sometimes there were
Hmm.
opportunities to teach longer days, like at a retreat, which was all, I really love those longer workshops because you could get a lot deeper with people. And it
Yeah.
was so funny right before the pandemic hit. I will say for quilters and maybe other makers too, that way of teaching where I was for a while I was going every other weekend. I was flying somewhere and it is exhausting. It just
Yes.
wore me out and it was not very sustainable financially. And I was thinking, what am I going to do? How much longer can I keep this up? I wasn't sure. I was like, I might not
Right.
be able to keep doing this because I am not being able to be creative myself. And it just wears and tears and it disrupts my own sense of community and place if I'm always flying to other people's places, right? And some of
Sure.
that's good, like for 3 week vacation, it's
Right.
great to do it. You
Go live
need that
somewhere else.
sometimes,
Yeah,
but not every other weekend. Imagine how disruptive that is for your own sense of community back at your home. And
I can.
so I was feeling pretty dire about the situation at the beginning of 2020, even though I had my whole year mapped out. But another thing I did some journaling. And one of the things I had written about that I wanted to do was have more in depth. I really wanted to take my teaching to a deeper level where I was really interacting with people about their, with quilting as a life practice, because I've always thought of it as a life practice. I could sometimes teach it, I could only get a little bit of that in when I would teach for 6 hours here and 6 hours there, and always a different group of people.
Hmm.
Um, but I had written that down. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I really want to start teaching at a deeper level where people are thinking more about, how they create patterns in their life, not just about how they create patterns in their patchwork. And then the pandemic hit and everything, every gig I had set up just fell like dominoes. And I said, my friend who's an artist, she says, well, you should just teach them online. It's like, oh, I can't. I had so many yes buts. I was like, yeah, but I can't. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. I don't know if somebody will take it. I don't know. And finally I was like, I don't really have the privilege to say yes, but anymore. Like, I got to figure out how to earn some money so I can keep this new house I just bought in Cincinnati, and it was my first full year of having my own house. And so I just jumped online, and one of the guilds that I had a contract with said they would be willing to try it. And I taught, and it was just, we didn't know if people would sign up, and it just sold out like that. And it was just such a great experience. So then I just jumped into it. But the reality is that I was able to go deeper with this, because now I can do a series of workshops. So this, like I said, last year we did the practice of making do. This winter we're doing abstract piecing, and each workshop builds on itself. It's freestanding, but we had 70 season pass holders taking all 6 of the abstract piecing workshop. So it becomes a broad conversation, and we have people from all over the world in it. And it's a continuous, we bring in things from the workshop before and the workshop, and it's building, and it's able to go deeper. And then the Brave Patch community is another level of depth that we can take this. So it actually unfolded, this opportunity to think of our craft as, whether you want to think of it as self-care or whatever, but, it becomes a really valuable tool for navigating our lives, not just a distraction, but a way to know who we are, and a way to know how we relate to others, and a way for us to tap in and speak our truth, and to, we had Mary Margaret Petway from G's Ben as our first speaker at the first abstract piecing workshop, to just do you, she's like, you do you, right? And for us to learn how to do ourselves, to be ourselves. And also there's a lot of unlearning in craft that we're doing nowadays too, with, the precision and the perfection and the and I think that goes across all craft practices for women. That, I know when I was in home ec, when I'm old enough that I had home ec classes when I was in school, and, we were taught how to make things perfect. We were taught how to do everything right. And it was very prescribed. And so there's years of that we have to, with improv, that's not the goal. And it can be very difficult for people to jump into this new world of, listening to our internal cues and following those, doing ourselves, being ourselves, even knowing what our preferences are, all of that. And so it's very exciting to bring that to people and have people, I learn as much from my students as they learn from me. I think it's a group thing. We build the learning community together. And so, it's been exciting that this time has shown up out of this, universal adversity. But I think for makers, you can probably speak more to people doing other kinds of craft too. But I know for quilt makers, this is a golden era. People are taking workshops left and right with all their favorite classes right out of their own sewing rooms, and they love it. Yeah. They love it.
Yeah.
And that's going to show up. I mean, there's going to be some incredibly interesting quilts being made in the next, couple of decades, I think, from this period, this new reality.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, how exciting to be a part of that, to be a facilitator of it even, and to connect all these people together.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Been good.
It's been really good.
Yeah.
So let's see. I'm going to just check in with myself and my questions.
I know, I just go all over the place.
No. This is what I want. Like, the questions are honestly there to, one, give a little continuity between interviews, 2, because I have some like personal questions that I'm like,
Uh-huh.
I want to know what they think about this, what they do. Um, and also, yeah, just to kind of like keep us going. So I really liked what you said about unlearning and craft and the perfectionism, because so much of craft is wrapped up in craftsmanship, in artisanship, and like that the point is to get better and better until it is perfect excellence, right?
Mhm.
And letting go of that is very hard. And I've seen my students over the years struggle with that too, where I'm like, I do a lot of like zine making workshops, and it's like, it's good that it's a mess. It's good that it's unfiltered, unedited with typos, on like long form, whatever. Like that's the beauty of it. That's the expression. That's like the vulnerability of it, all
Exactly.
those things. And it's really hard to go there. It's hard to trust yourself enough that your answer to a creative problem is going to be the right answer. And so like getting people beyond that like any answer you make is the right answer for you. I mean, I struggle with that in my own studio. I constantly beat myself up mentally as I'm creating of like, what do you do? All the things, right? Like you don't know what you're doing,
All the
you're
doubts,
terrible. That looks terrible.
all
What the
those
heck?
voices.
Yes. And like learning to kind of accept those voices and move beyond them or forward with
Hmm.
them is
Hmm.
it's very challenging. And a lot of us do need uh, a guide, So thank you
Or
for being
just
a guide.
a guide, but also a community of people that are also working through those same things, not
Yeah.
just one guide, but a whole
But
community of people
yeah,
that have, that are working through those things together.
yeah.
And I mean, I think the other beautiful thing about that is that, we're talking about diversity when we start to go out of, when we're all working towards the same goal of this perfection or this precision or this exact right way of doing it that's been prescribed. First of all, we ask who's prescribing it, whose rules are we following, and
Hmm.
why, and where did they come from even, and do we even know? We're not even questioning the rules for so long. And then, as we start to decide, oh, maybe that isn't, it's not about being sloppy, or I mean, being messy and everything is great, but it's not like our goal is to be sloppy. The goal is just to be you and to do what
Hmm.
is ever going to work towards your goals. Like you create according to what you want to express. So
Hmm.
there may be things that you want to express. You may want to express lumpiness and you know knottedness and maybe there's something about that. So maybe you don't have your quilt all flat. Maybe it is got some lumps and some weird shape to it so that it's not a perfectly flat plane that where everything meets exactly.
Hmm.
Or it's all about what you want to express. I taught at Penland School of Craft, I think 2015 maybe, or 17, I can't remember, but I did do a practice of making do workshop at Penland for 2 weeks. And so Penland was one of the places I could go and teach more in depth with
Yeah.
students, because you have 2 week sessions. And so it was a beautiful, beautiful class. And I remember there was one woman in the class, and she has since died, but she was like in her like 90s. And she was
Hmm.
taking this workshop, and her husband would come every year to Penland. And she took the workshop, or she was in her late 80s or something. So she was, we were on the third floor. So I was concerned about her getting up to class every day. But
Sure.
she, over the course of her life, she was always into craft. And this was the thing her and her husband would do together. He would take a woodworking class or something. She would take a textile class. And she was so good with textiles. And she had brought all these beautiful things that she had embroidered in the past and things like that. And this was the practice of making do. So we were talking about, we went to the thrift store in Asheville and got materials, and we were talking about all those things about cultural meanings and things like that. Anyway, she was working on a piece, and I remember I came in and I was checking to see how she was doing, and she was really upset. She had this beautiful idea and she was trying to execute it, and her hand was so shaky she could not make great stitches in her book.
Yeah.
She was like, this is what I used to be able to do, and I can't even sew a straight line now. And she was really deeply upset about it. And it has to do with aging and
Yeah.
losing our capabilities, which is something that as craftspeople we come across as we get older,
I saw my
And
grandma struggle with that. It was heartbreaking for her,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah, it was heartbreaking because this is something she really loved.
Hmm.
And I said to her, I said, you know what? I mean, and I looked at it and I thought it was beautiful just the way it was. And I said, yeah, your line is not perfect. And I see your stitches are a little wobbly. And I said, but it is so important that you do this now, and because you are expressing who you are now in this stitch, in the line that you make with your hand, your old hand that doesn't work the way it used to work. And I
Hmm.
said, do you know how important it is and how few voices we have from older makers, where makers give up making because they can't make those lines anymore perfectly. And it's like, this expression is so valuable to see this, to understand, because you know what? I'm going to get old. The youngest person in this class is going to get old, and we're going to face this ourselves. And to be able to see you doing it with such courage and bravery and being, this is it. This is how I make stitches at my age, my early 90s, my late 80s. This is what my hand looks like. And there's a lot of beauty to that imperfection. And it's also just very powerful to see. And it made a big difference for her to hear that, and to
Yeah.
be able to be told that this is not only is it beautiful, it is important truth to hear, and that you are, trailblazing for other makers that are coming through, that are also going to be at some point at a place where they're going to have to decide, I mean, there's pain too that we can have, but can we stitch imperfectly without pain? Will we continue to stitch, or will we say our stitches aren't good enough and just quit? Right.
Hmm.
And so I think that it was extremely impactful for me to just witness it, and because I really hadn't thought about it that much until it came up in this class, and the idea of making do with even the way we stitch our lines at whatever age we are, right?
Yeah. I
And
was gonna say that it seems like it was extremely powerful for her, but also
it
clearly a lasting impression for you and
for me and other
probably the
people
other
in the
people in the
class,
class. Yeah, exactly.
definitely. And that's the diversity. We have uh, there's the diversity of age, of all of the kinds of diversities we can have when we're freed from this idea of everything has to be perfect and just right and match some kind of ideal. And I think that's the
Yeah.
power of that, which
Yeah.
is pretty exciting. So I'm excited to see what's going to be happening in quilting coming up in the next decade or so.
Yeah. Well, and I've noticed that it really felt like pre-pandemic that the interest in craft had kind of started really waning. I'd say back in like early 2000s, we saw a pretty big resurgence of, like the Stitch and Bitch and knitting
Right.
circles and all that
Yep.
jazz. And it felt like it was kind of like the people who came to know it during that time, a big percentage maybe stuck with it, but it didn't feel like we were capturing a younger crowd anymore. But
Mhm.
when we all kind of got locked inside, um, I found that a lot of people turned to craft not just as a way to stave off boredom, but also as a way to exert some kind of control over their life and have something that they could be responsible for the outcome, that wasn't so susceptible to like everything else that was going on in the world, that they could take another stitch and then another, and that at the end they would get a quilt or would get a sweater. And I think initially a lot of people found solace and sanity in that practice, as well as like something to do, something to learn and engage themselves. But carrying it forward beyond that, I think for all of us, coming from that place of extreme self-care, of a way to connect beyond ourselves to other people virtually, was really impactful. And now that we are kind of re-entering the in-person world this year, I'm so curious to see how everything we learned about community building and self-care and through creativity is going to continue forward to these in-person experiences in our local communities. I don't know. That's just some thoughts I had.
I mean, I am too. I really don't know exactly how that's all going to be.
I have no idea.
I think it'll be very joyful. I think there'll be a lot of joy in meeting in person again. And so that's the only thing I can imagine. There is something nice. I mean, I taught a couple of workshops in between when things kind of let up, right after the first vaccine round. I taught at Madeline Island, and I taught at another location close to them. Both of them were planned before the pandemic. Anyways, but the classes were small. There were only like 6 in one class and 8 in the other class. It was pretty small, but there was a lot of joy in being back. And it was very special to be able to meet with people in person again like that. And they were both 1-week retreats. So there was time to get to know each other and really have a little mini community that came together. So and it will be interesting. I do think that like the hand stitching stuff, I love to see that more and more people are hand stitching their quilts again, because it became almost non-existent for a while. Like machine quilting was definitely everything, and now there's
it became
more
less
people.
about efficiency and more about the practice.
Exactly.
You know,
like we want to.
It wasn't like how fast I can bang out a quilt. It's like, how can I take time with this object and with myself and with my community?
Yep. Right.
Yeah.
So that's exciting.
Real quick, I gotta show you this. It's been a long time. So I feel like everything we're talking about is, so one of the questions I was going to ask is, would you still contribute the same project you contributed before? But I gotta say it, and I do want you to answer that question, but just wait. This is what you wrote, and I feel like it's so in tune with what you're expressing now. And I love, it's changed, it's different. It's not mending, it's quilting and all these things. But so you actually titled your pattern piece, that your tutorial, instead of like X project name, you called it Mending as Devotion. And you said, I believe in creatively mending clothing because it connects me to a deeper desire to care for, repair, and to tend to worn out places within myself and in my relationships with others. Mending for me is an act of devotion that nourishes my sense of personal agency, as conspicuously mended clothing can be a proclamation against consumerism. Taking the time to mend often feels like a pause from the excitement of creating something completely new. Mending is slow work, and the fix is impermanent. It's meticulous work and can be tedious. What is the reward? I asked my partner what he liked best about his mended jeans. They're unique and nobody has a pair like them, he replied. I felt cared for, and my favorite pair of jeans was saved from oblivion. Mending a hole or a rip in a pair of jeans or shirt is simple. Here are some simple steps. And then this is okay, here we go. Okay. This is the beautiful pictures you sent for us to photograph, or I think you sent the objects and we photographed them, or you photographed them and sent them to us. But just this gorgeous hand stitching on the jeans. And yeah, I love that. The
Aw.
simple act and connecting. So would you still submit a mended pair of jeans, or would you submit something different?
Oh, maybe. Let's see. Would I submit for the mending? Well, I think, I don't know. I don't think I could top that. I think
It was
in
pretty
terms
good.
of a mending book. And, it's been interesting because when you did that book now, since then, there's been so much focus on mending, and it is a big thing now. I mean, visible mending in particular is just,
Yeah.
whew, and it's
Yeah.
huge, and I love that it is. It's great. It's wonderful, and I'm glad I had an opportunity to share my experiences with mending through your book,
I
early
mean,
on, and that it's
I
part of the record.
it
It's
is.
out there.
I'd like to
Um,
think that, this kind of precious little book back from 2012 helped, because though in its time, it wasn't like wild off the shelf, when it finally went out of print, we'd sold all but 300 copies of a 10,000 run. Like, you
that's
can't tell me
good.
that didn't make an impact.
Yeah, no,
And
it did.
one of the things that I really tried to push story publishing to do too was, like, I want it in all the libraries. And I still say that, like, I have a few, like, those 300 books, I bought the end run. So I have like about 100 books left. If you have a library in your area that wants a copy of this book, I will send it to them for free, because, like, I want it to exist in library collections as a resource. And I'd like to think that the things that we talked about as a group of contributors of diverse voices, of people creating in different ways, all through mending, that we, helped kind of just nudge things along, like, and that we can continue to all be a resource. I've had so many people email me, or reviews mention, like, how this book taught them the nuts and bolts of, like, sewing on a button, but also inspired them to take it a step further through these stories and through these, kind of additional inspired creative mending projects. So I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, that is the best outcome I could, well, I guess, other than like best-selling
Yeah,
author or whatever it
right.
is. Yeah.
A million copies sold.
Right. I'll take my 10,000. That's pretty all right. Or
But well,
9,000,
and
what,
the
700.
other thing that's really great about that book too is that it is a snapshot of that community of crafters from that
Yeah.
period of time that were all about mending, that we were all doing that. I mean, my blog was more focused on quilting, but I was doing a lot of mending for myself,
Yeah.
right? It was part of my personal growth, just like quilt making is part of my personal growth. The mending was part of my nurturing and self-care of my own mental life and whatever. So, but we were also all connected through Flickr or however our early blogs,
Yeah.
and that is just such a beautiful snapshot of that era that was, and it is kind of part of a tradition that just is in there. And then there was newer stuff coming, and there was older
Yes.
stuff behind, and it's just such a beautiful book for that reason, that it captures that early internet community of crafters and menders who,
Yes.
we put our ideas out there and shared them.
Yeah. We really did. And
Yeah.
what's interesting too is, I've tried to reach out to all the contributors of the book. There was 21 of them. And I think I've come to find about half of them it's not that they're just not pursuing creative entrepreneurism anymore. They are offline. Like, and they were like, thank you for the opportunity. Like, maybe like 30%, I couldn't even find their contact information. It's like, website's
Right.
gone,
Yeah.
etc. But the other 20% that got back to me were like, I'm honored for the invite. Thank you for thinking of me. But no, I'm not on the internet anymore in a public way. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. And And it's like, it's super fascinating because I find growing up in the age I did, and I imagine for people maybe, 10, 15 years younger than me, that they couldn't imagine just unplugging like that. And I think that's kind of an interesting phenomenon too. Not that it's good, bad, or otherwise, but it is definitely an interesting trend I'm seeing, even through the pandemic, that like as we're coming together online, some people also chose to unplug completely because it had become a pretty negative thing in their life, and that it was kind of consuming their ability to interact and find a place locally and in person, because they were putting so much effort and time into their like public online thing. And I know a lot of people struggle with that balance.
I
I
definitely
don't know.
do. I definitely
Yeah,
do. And I've cut back a lot on Instagram. And it's hard to cut back though, because then you feel like, oh, I'm getting out of the loop, you know?
there's
And
that fear of missing out.
yeah, that fear of, not being seen and not staying up and keeping up. And one of my mantras this year has been, and this came out of the Making Do practice too. I am enough, I have enough, I give enough, I'm good enough,
Yes.
and just do what I need to do and be okay with it, But it has been hard. My focus now, I'm trying to focus more of my energy into Brave Patch, so it leaves less energy to be in Instagram, and I don't even do Facebook anymore hardly. And it's just it's really challenging, and it really, oh my God, it just, for me, I don't enjoy it at all, really. I don't enjoy doing the Instagram and keeping up with that stuff, and it does feel like it is a business necessity, not a creative act. Whereas when I
Yes.
had my
It's
blog,
marketing.
right, it was marketing, and when I had my blog, it was more of a creative act, and that was hard too. That was hard to do, but it was a creative practice of writing and getting my ideas out. And I think what I wrote for your book is probably almost exactly what I had on my blog, or very close to what I
Mm-hmm.
would write on my blog. So for me back then, writing my blog was also a practice, a creative practice of writing about craft. But now with Instagram and stuff, you're not even encouraged to write, you're encouraged to do, your first line, craft it so it has keywords in it, so it gets more of a travel around, it gets seen more, and it's just not the same. And
It doesn't
it
feel
is
the
hard.
same.
Yeah, and I would like to figure out ways. I mean, I think we've got our newsletters. I don't, the newsletter is somewhat good, but I do think people probably get tired of reading newsletters in their emails. I don't know, but whatever. We're just
Well, I
rolling.
feel
We're creatures of whatever the internet wants us to do. We're like, let's do it, to keep up.
a little bit, a lot of my friends and I locally have been talking about, because I essentially manage like three online personalities or businesses. I have Little Woods Herbal, which is my herbs and tea company,
Mhm.
that has the brick and mortar store and is more locally focused. And then I have um, Kristen M. Roach, which is like my art practice. And then I have CraftLeftovers, which used to just be my, I'd say it like a craft blog, but it's really become more of like a creative process, documentation,
Mhm.
and um, more about creative entrepreneurism and creative sustainability in general, versus just like specifically, like there are still tutorials, but it's less about just tutorials. I feel like I've put
Right.
enough tutorials out in the world that I'm like a little less beholden to having to do that every week like I used to.
Yeah, right.
And, like look in the archive, there's a lot there.
Yeah,
It'll keep
that's
you
me
occupied for
too.
a
Me
while.
too.
Yeah. Um and so I had someone say like, "Oh, well, you're like online all the time." And I'm like, "No, I'm really not." And I think the thing is that I found, I don't know who gave me this advice, or it was probably some blog or YouTube video or somebody talking about marketing, right? Where they're like, think about almost like what you were mentioning about quilting, like what's your goal? Like it doesn't have to be a certain way. It doesn't have to be cut to a specific
Yeah.
pattern. It can be what's going to serve you. And so
Mhm.
like for me, each three of those social media online presences, they all have different goals in mind. And so I
Mhm.
execute them in different ways, but it's to my own pattern. Like, sure, I'm going to look at what other people have done and incorporate it. But if it's not serving me, if it's being disruptive to my family life, my personal life, or my ability to actually like get the work done in my studio or get the tea blended as it were at Littlewoods,
Mhm.
like it's not serving me and it needs to go away. But it's easy to say that, but it's hard to actually execute. Like there's definitely been times where I've been cruising on Instagram and realize I've been looking at it for, a half hour, an hour, kind of aimlessly when I could have been making something, which I would have found like long term much more fulfilling in my everyday life. And
Right.
it's hard to kind of continually retrack and rebalance yourself as you're going through that. So yeah, it's definitely a new thing we all struggle with.
Yeah. And there's
I don't
that.
think there is a right answer.
Yeah, no, I don't know what the answer is. There's also, this idea that we're, you know, there's the pressure to create content for Instagram and things like that. Now with the videos and all that stuff, I'm like, oh my God, I have to make videos now. And but then there's also the responsibility of, I don't know, am I contributing to other people's distractions from their craft? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And I
Yeah.
don't know if that's taking on too much, but I think about that too. It's like, why am I feeding into this? And I mean, I know why I'm feeding into it as a marketing situation, and I have a lot of gratitude that, if it wasn't for social media, I don't know if I would have ever been able to write my book. Wouldn't have had these workshops. I wouldn't have had an audience, like this. And so there is that, and that's a good thing. And it is important to recognize that. But then there's also so many other aspects to it that are problematic. And so it is a constant recalibration for me, at least with this. But I like what you're saying, do it, work at it through your goals, right? And work at it according to your goals. I think that's what I've been doing more and more lately, and it's getting easier
I've
when you
noticed some of
have.
the people that I really admire, like Lisa Cogden. Are
Mhm.
you familiar with her?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So like she's taken a pretty big stand on the changing algorithms of say like Instagram, where she's basically like, I'm not doing video because that's
Uh-huh.
not how I create. Like that's not how
Right,
I think. That's not how I
right,
function. I am a 2D artist.
right.
I love that they're so open about it and they're just and there was a lot of like people putting their hands in the air and be like, yeah. And I think a lot of what she said over the last year very publicly on Instagram about, you know, don't be beholden to social media. Like it's a tool, use it as a tool, don't let it dictate how you make. Like
Even though they are trying to
incorporate it.
dictate, they're even trying, but they are trying to dictate. They're saying, well, if you don't do reels, you won't get in the standings. You won't get as many people to see your stuff, So yes, and
Yeah, yes, and right.
they're
There's a
beholden.
penalty.
Those are, yeah. And I think you can overcome it too. I for one don't like watching video. I don't like it. Like I always swipe by the videos. Like I don't want to watch people unfurling their quilts and stitching quickly on Instagram. I've done a couple myself. I've been trying to like dabble in it a little bit, but honestly, I don't enjoy watching them that much. So uh maybe there will be a world for all of us just static image people that we just like. I like looking at the pictures, you know. I don't like the noise and the movement and not constantly in my feed. So maybe
it is kind of an interesting thing, isn't it? That like
yeah.
what you said, us static people.
We like the static image. I mean, it's more peaceful to me to see the image still than to have the music and the da da da, you know. I mean,
Then again,
it can capture my attention sometimes. It depends, but
oh yeah,
one
absolutely.
after another drives me crazy.
It's a bit much. It almost kind of,
Short circuits
and
me.
maybe this is my age, but
Yeah.
I find it a little overwhelming.
Yeah, me
Whereas I know my
too.
daughter who's 8 is like, bring it.
Yeah, yeah.
No, like,
Well.
why are we looking at static images when I can be dealing with video? So, I
Well,
mean, there might be a little bit of a generational thing too
yeah.
happening, and that's okay.
Well,
But
that's what
that,
I was going to say, you know, that was the thing. One of the questions you sent me earlier is like, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who wants to be a creative entrepreneur?
yeah,
And I would just say, get help, you know, as much as you can early on, try to work with other people. And,
yeah,
you know, you may not have the resources, maybe not at first, to hire people to help you. So you have to do your own. But whenever you can, if you can start, you know, paying other people or doing some kind of a exchange with them so that they can take on some of that, or, you know, if you have a young granddaughter who loves doing videos, let her into your craft room and go to town and create
yeah,
your
let her show you
TikToks for
how.
you, right? And
Absolutely.
you know, I think that's an important thing. I'm still struggling with that. I'm not good at like letting go of control of my process, but as a bit, you know, my creative practice and my business practice are really two different things. And I'm really trying to incorporate. This is the first year I've actually worked with somebody closely that's helped me out. June Dudley, who is my kind of my production person with the workshops, and she's the community kind of coordinator and manager for Brave
Hmm.
Patch, and she's been awesome. And a lot of the stuff I'm doing, there's just absolutely no way I could be doing it without her efforts and her participation in this project.
Yeah,
And so, you know, that was very key. Somebody told me, you know, hire people to do the parts that you're not good at,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
and that's a big thing.
It is. I mean, well, and that's how I'm able to take this 2 weeks to go live somewhere else, is that I have help. And
Hmm.
having the brick and mortar store has really reinforced that, because there's, if I get sick or anything else, the store would be closed unless I had help. So it came out of necessity of, not having enough hands on my body to handle it all. And that's actually, for me, it's translated over to my studio practice, where I made kind of like a 5-year plan to like get Littlewoods up off the ground. So it was kind of fairly self-sufficient. And then about a year ago, that refocus on my art business and start working with that. And I was able to get an intern through a local university. And then after her internship was over, kept her on as my studio assistant. And so she's been helping me do a lot of the stuff, like sending out newsletters and updating the pattern archive and all the kind of, even editing my grant applications and that kind of thing.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's been amazing. So like, just to throw it out there, if you have a local university, absolutely tap into that resource for getting an intern to help take some things off your plate. And
Right.
I find, like, at first it's really scary and it feels like it's taking up a lot of time because you have to train them on things. But the last show I did, I taught her how to mat, and she ended up matting all my work for me. So
Oh,
like,
wow.
that was a huge amount of work off my plate that I could then refocus on creating content, running the business in other ways, or just being at my studio,
Yeah.
making the things. So it's pretty amazing, if, like, once you get to the point where it's practical and economical and all that jazz. But because at first you got to do it all yourself. Like that's just part of being an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah, right.
But so I see the time now. I feel like
we went a long time.
I feel like the
fast.
last 40 minutes, like the last time I looked up at the clock, it was like 12:30, and now it's like, oh, whoa, it's 1:10. So do you have time for a last question?
Sure.
Okay. So, oh, this is hard. Okay. I have 2 questions I want to ask you. So one, do you have any like daily rituals that kind of keep you engaged in your creative practice?
Well, I could do better on my daily rituals, I will say. But I do have I haven't had a studio outside of my house for a while. And just in January, I moved into a new studio. And so I do have a firm and no interference, unless I'm actually out of town, commitment to showing up at my studio Wednesdays and Fridays, whether or not I do anything or not, like I'm just going to be there. And I usually get one other day too, like a Monday or a weekend day. Sometimes I get 2 other days a week, but Wednesday and Friday, I don't schedule anything else. I don't have my computers there. And I just show up, and I also stare at the wall for at least 15 minutes to start, just a blank wall. It's not quite like meditation. It's more like letting your mind wander and just stare at the wall and let my mind wander and breathe and just daydream. So I give my time space, and if I show up, that's enough. If I create, that's great. If I get into the flow and create, that's great. But just being there is my practice. And then I guess the only other thing I would say is that it's just practicing self-compassion as much as possible in everything that I do, on a day-to-day basis. I think that's the thing that I keep in mind. With my creative work, but also in just how I am in the world. And so those are the things that are the biggest 2 things. Just show up at the studio, whether I create or not, just show up. And then the other thing is just having self-compassion. And accepting where I am, what I can do and what I can't do, or what I don't get done, or when I've just spent a day being lazy, whatever, it's just like, that's okay. I'm okay with that. It's good. I needed it.
I think too that time to let your mind wander, going back to our conversation about social media a little bit. Yeah. It's a beautiful space to get inspired and experience new ideas. But there is a real strength too in staring at nothing, staring off into space and just letting and exploring your own mind and what lives there.
Right.
And that's I don't know.
Because there's a lot going on, especially when you're taking in so much information, right? It needs time to percolate and present, and you have to make space for doing nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there any last thoughts or anything you'd like to add? And I will let you go, because like I said, we're way over time, so I really appreciate the additional conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
No, not really. I just, I'm just thrilled that I had an opportunity to reconnect with you, and that I'm part of this community of the Mend It Better book. And it's been a real treat to do this interview with you, Kristen.
Yeah, well, it's been a real treat too. Like I said, I wish this technology existed back in the day, back in 2012, because it would have been really fun to do some Zoom meetings, Zoom experiences for readers and things like that all together.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. All right, well, I'll let you go, and you have a really great rest of your day, and enjoy getting into the studio tomorrow.
You too. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.